we're back.
Please, sound a little bit enthused.
That is not a word.
Enthused, right?
Is not a word.
Isn't enthused just like a short form for enthusiastic?
Enthused is not a word. I remember very vividly. I apologize to our listeners, but I'm going to have this little aside.
Enthused.
I was a junior in high school when my English teacher said, and don't use the word enthused. It's not a word. It sounds like something some overly wet and gushy female would say at your age. And that picture in my head of an overly wet, gushy female was just so horrifying to me.
But enough about Andrea Dworkin.
So that has stuck in my head, that enthused is not a word. But I digress. Anyway. Our newest case that we're going to talk about today is Great Lakes Insurance versus Raiders Retreat Realty Company, LLC.
Ooh, property disputes. I love these.
Actually, no.
Oh.
It's a contract law dispute.
Oh, okay. Let's go.
So, by the company name Raiders Retreat Realty, you'd think it would be.
Say that 3 times fast,
right.
By the way.
Real estate related, but it's not. But this place, Raiders Retreat Realty, is a company in Pennsylvania, and for some reason, they own a yacht.
All right.
And to insure that yacht, they chose an insurance company that was headquartered in the United Kingdom. That's
strange in and of itself, but
yes.
Maybe there's some, like, money savings, I guess.
And oddly enough, this UK-based insurance company is called Great Lakes Insurance.
You'd think Michigan, and you'd be wrong.
Right. I'm confused about all of it, so that's the premise here.
This is why I feel like in these company descriptions and stuff, they have to say a UK corporation or a Michigan-based. Like they have to. Those seem like they're a little bit like redundant after a while. Like Philadelphia LLC, a Pennsylvania corporation, but you have to make those distinctions because of shit like this.
Well, apparently, someone at Raiders Retreat Realty took the yacht out for like some cruising and joyriding in Florida in June of 2019. And the yacht ran aground in Fort Lauderdale, causing over $300,000 worth of damage. $300,000 worth of damage. Raiders submitted a claim to their insurance company, Great Lakes Insurance, as one would expect, right? They're not going to fork out $300,000 to fix the yacht. But the insurance company dismissed their claim due to negligence, basically.
Uh-huh.
They said, we dismiss your claim due to the fact that your fire extinguisher equipment was out of date and that apparently Raiders had misrepresented that fact to the insurance company. So even though there was no fire involved, there was no, like, the fire extinguisher would not have saved $300,000 worth of damage.
It's not going to do anything if you run aground.
Right, but the insurance company said, oh, well, your shit wasn't up to snuff, so we're not going to pay any of it.
That's kind of insane. I'm sorry. I understand that insurance companies get a bad rap in some situations, and in other situations they're very helpful. But this seems like one of those bad situations. Just on face.
Right.
The fact that they're like, that's like saying that your door didn't lock in the back when people were running out the front. Like, that's just stupid.
So it's important to establish here, though, since the Great Lakes Insurance Company is a foreign company, and we're dealing with maritime law... Oh. They are permitted to choose which jurisdiction's laws should apply should a dispute arise.
Oh, wow.
So, this is known as, and this is where I get into some...
Weeds?
Well, no, yes, but some jargon here. Okay. And so I want to explain this because this is central to the case.
Okay.
This is what is called choice of law provision. So when you draw up a contract, and in a case like this, you can say... in the contract, if something were to arise, if a dispute were to arise, we will use X state's laws to basically settle the dispute, right?
Right.
So, in this case, they used Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Kind of randomly, but
yeah.
I'll get to why they might have chosen that in a minute.
Does Pennsylvania touch water?
Lately, yes.
A lake?
I think partially.
Is there a Pennsylvania coast?
So the contract that Great Lakes provided Raiders, and which Raiders signed knowingly, it said, quote, "It is hereby agreed that any dispute arising hereunder shall be adjudicated according to well-established entrenched principles and precedents of substantive United States federal admiralty law and practice, but where no such well-established precedent exists, the insuring agreement is subject to the substantive laws, of the state of New York." Excuse me.
Oh.
State of New York.
Okay.
I apologize. It's Pennsylvania that was the other part. Yes.
Okay.
So Great Lakes Insurance said, we will settle this using the laws of the state of New York. And that was in the contract before any of this happened that they signed, at the beginning of their...
So when they signed this contract, that means they both had to agree on a jurisdiction in order to do that.
Right. This was stipulated in the contract,
So it
as
seems
I just
like
quoted.
as a standard for the contract for this company that operates out of the UK, they choose New York as a default. So that makes me think, does New York have particularly insurer-friendly laws?
I believe so, and we'll get into that. So the problem here is a conflating of terms, right?
Right.
So taken from a legal definition, this choice of law provision, which I just outlined, the purpose of a choice of law clause is to reduce legal uncertainty by prospectively selecting a law to govern an agreement between parties.
Right.
So these choice of law clauses in contracts facilitate settlement because they identify a specific law or a specific place's laws that will apply to resolve any potential dispute.
Right.
However, there's another type of provision called choice of forum clause.
Uh-huh.
So we have choice of law and choice of forum. One purpose of the choice of forum selection clause is to reduce litigation uncertainty by selecting a specific forum in which to resolve future disputes. By selecting a specific court to resolve your dispute, a forum selective clause operates to select a certain procedural law of a jurisdiction. So it's a very subtle difference. But literally in a choice of forum clause, you are saying we will adjudicate and what is the word I'm looking for? Litigate, thank you. Any dispute in this particular district.
And it has to be New York, and you have to pick a district within New York.
Basically.
Okay.
So very, very small, minute differences, right? There's a reason I'm getting into this, but I want to make sure that makes sense first. Okay, so Great Lakes Insurance Company and their counsel are calling this a choice of law provision, and that seems to be correct because, as I said, it allows the executor of the contract to pick a place and its laws to govern any disputes, which is what they did. By definition, choice of forum, however, implies that the clause specifies a particular court or forum where they haven't done so in the contract.
Right.
So this case went to district court, and Raiders brought 5 claims against the insurance company,
right,
based on Pennsylvania law.
Oh.
So they claimed that the choice of law provision was unenforceable because there is Supreme Court precedent in a case called the Bremen versus Zapata Offshore Company. And so the Supreme Court precedent says, and listen very closely, quote, "A contractual choice of forum clause should be held unenforceable if enforcement would contravene a strong public policy of the forum in which the suit is brought, whether declared blah, 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 blah."
So then what's the point of the policy?
So note the choice of the word choice of forum, right? So the precedent says choice of forum, not choice of law.
Right.
So there is a Pennsylvania law that protects people and companies from bad faith denial of insurance claims, which is exactly what's happened here, right?
Right.
So that's why Raiders is saying, we want to use Pennsylvania law to adjudicate this because, or to litigate this, I keep using the wrong word, to litigate this because we would win, right?
Right.
New York doesn't have that law. Perhaps that's why Great Lakes decided to go with New York, because they felt emboldened to make these types of bad faith claims, right? So the district court ruled in favor of Great Lakes, claiming that this was a choice of law case and not a choice of forum case.
Right.
Of course, Raiders appealed it, and the Third Circuit ruled in favor of Raiders, claiming that the district court was too narrow in its definitions and said, look, there's no... in this particular case, there shouldn't be a distinction. Choice of forum, choice of law, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. For this case, they're the same. And they cited past precedent from the Fifth Circuit, which did exactly that.
Well, this is now two situations in which precedent has been cited or at least referred to that basically say that the choice of forum is unenforceable. So if you say, I want this handled in the Fourth District Court, that's not enforceable if there's something... I think the purpose of it is the Supreme Court and other courts get upset when you court shop. And there seems to be an element of court shopping when you set up things that can only happen in a certain venue for something like that.
This is true. However, you don't know what the future dispute might be.
Right. That's true.
But on the same side...
But if you're an insurance company,
right.
you know which bench you get to is going to give you which result you like. Right.
So there is a certain aspect of that in this thing, but
it's like why people set up LLCs in Delaware, because the taxation and system and structure there is a lot less difficult than an LLC in New York or California.
Right. So this is basically what the Supreme Court's going to have to answer. Do the facts in this case leave the court to make a distinction between choice of law or choice of forum, or can we collapse the two for this case?
Right.
In doing research for this, obviously, just trying to figure out what the hell choice of forum versus choice of law is took me a lot to kind of go through the weeds.
That sounds like something that people even in the legal field struggle with.
Probably.
That's something that I don't think that many people in law, even in contract law, specialize in.
Right.
Like you have to find a certain expert who knows how that works.
So yeah, I had to dig a lot to understand this, but I think now I finally do.
It makes sense.
But what I found also interesting is there is an extensive history of court cases dealing with these types of provisions. And so for a long time in the history of our country, like from the founding up until like the late 1800s, 100 years.
Right.
This idea of choice of law and choice of forum was unheard of.
Right.
Basically all courts were like, fuck you, like get out of here. Like, no, you can't just choose where you're gonna litigate a court.
Yeah, you can't just pick whichever laws or forums are more favorable.
But as different cases have arisen, they've become more friendly to this idea, especially when foreign countries have come into play, because they don't have jurisdiction, they're a foreign country.
It would seem to me, just logically, that the foreign country would come into play with whoever they're dealing business with. It's the laws of that place. So if a foreign country engages with a North Dakota company, you fall under North Dakota law. That seems like that would be fair to me. The fact that you would choose a jurisdiction that's where neither the company nor you exist, and then it falls into your lap, seems very odd. Yeah,
so because this is a foreign company, I think that's why it was sort of allowed. I'm really not sure what the procedure would be if, like you said, some company from North Dakota was like, oh, we want to use New York law.
You can't do that, yeah.
I would assume so.
Or a Chinese company contracts with a North Dakota company, it would seem like you would have to... your jurisdiction would be North Dakota. So... be mindful about which states you invest in.
But for a foreign company, is that really fair? Because a foreign company would then have to know the laws of every state if you're going to do business with people of different states.
Well, what happens when a foreign student comes and fucks up in a certain state? Then don't they fall into that state law? You're still arrested. You may not have to face some of this. You may fly out because you're a foreign national, but you still end up facing consequences.
Right, but that's one particular person. Let's say the same insurance company.
The corporations are people.
Let's say the same insurance company is dealing with 5 different states.
Right.
Insuring 5 different companies in 5 different states. Right. They would have to have like lawyers who are well versed in all of the state's laws. That's
why insurance is expensive.
Litigate something.
It should be under Florida law because that's where it ran aground, I think, but that's just me.
there's another point. So this is extremely complicated case.
Right.
That
We're now in 4 jurisdictions at this point, and one that's out of the country.
But I do find it interesting to kind of wrap this up, because it's not the most interesting case, but sorry. I should also say there's one other legal aspect to this that gets a little bit in the weeds, but I'm not going to talk about it unless it comes up in the opinion.
Right.
I'll come back to it.
And then something like this, it's like, I don't know how you could even game out how specific justices would respond to something like this, because this doesn't even... I don't even know how this falls under constitutional aspects. This is just litigating disputes between district courts. Right?
Right. And so...
So you can't say that someone's an originalist or not with something like this. I think it's just they're going to go off a precedent.
This is the reason that I think the Supreme Court took it, because we now have... One of the reasons that they take a lot of the cases they do is because we have circuit court splits.
Right.
Where one circuit says rules in a certain way,
right.
Another circuit rules in another way.
Appeals says this, and then they have to go to
and
the
so they're
Supreme
like,
Court.
well, now we have to make a decision.
That's why Joe Exotic wants to go to the Supreme Court.
Is choice of law or choice of forum, are they two different things? Should we... Theoretically, whatever the justices decide, they could collapse the two for good and just say they both mean the same thing.
If that's the case, then people who try to pick specific courts are screwed, because they just fall into the state's jurisdiction, and it's like whichever court in that state's available.
Right.
And some are nasty, some are good. Like there's certain... Even in the state of California, for example, if you get a DUI, there's certain courts you want to be in, because
right.
others are really just, others are like
Not
Singapore.
friendly to you, yeah.
At all. That's even if you were just... That's even for people who are beneath a .08. You could be at a .04, you could have had one glass of wine, and they'll still give you the same consequences, just because that's how the court functions.
I still think it's interesting, though, that what makes New York so amenable to insurance companies that are going to be like,
especially because it seems
this
like
bad faith type stuff, like
right. Maybe there's an insurance lobby in New York that there's think about it. Actually, this is a good point. There's so much real estate and property value in New York. Therefore, insurance companies, most of which are probably based in New York, have to insure so much within that state. They've probably lobbied a very comfortable agreement for themselves where they can step out if a lot of things happen, because most of their money probably, if you're, New York Life, stuff like that, like they're basically based in Manhattan. I think that they have to have strong laws in New York for them, because that's where they operate from.
Yeah.
Versus other states probably are like, sorry, you have to pay out.
I mean, I don't know who I feel for in this case, because
I feel for the shore of Fort Lauderdale that got run aground by the fucking yacht.
Number one, why
Actually,
does this place have a yacht?
I feel...
why are they joyriding in
if there's one thing I've learned...
Florida?
If there's one thing that I've learned, if you go out on a boat with a few people and anyone wants to drink, let someone else drive. Or hire someone for the day to drive for you, and they'll do it for like $100 to $200. They caused $300,000 of damage on this yacht, and they couldn't hire one fucking captain for the day because of an idiot? Like,
and the yacht was insured for like $500,000.
Like, so they basically destroyed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I went out on a boat in Miami. We all drank, and we had this one guy who went out for like $100 and drove us to the island, and it was fun, and came back. It wasn't a yacht. It was like a boat the size of this couch, but it was fun. Why do you want to drive a boat? I don't know why people want to ride boats so badly. It's fun to be in a boat. It's not really as fun to drive a boat. I'm sorry. Especially if you're going to have a few drinks and go have fun. So what have we learned?
It's very convoluted. I don't know.
Bring a captain. That's what we learned.
UK, New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, they're all implicated in this case. And none of them come out looking good, excuse me.
No. I hope that it falls under UK jurisdiction so that the judges with the wigs get involved, because I think that's... I think it would be very funny to see a very pissed off judge in one of those like curly wigs sitting there have to adjudicate over people on a yacht in Florida. I would just love to watch the footage of that.
No.
Yeah.
Case dismissed.
Ah.